Welcome to You're Probably Right podcast. I'm your host, MCM. We are going to talk about a few different things, but I'm going to let you know we're going to also do some questions today. Obviously, I'm not perfect and I don't know everything, but I'm going to give you my take, my Canadian middle-aged black man take on some of these questions and other things. Okay, so some questions will be like, deadlines, do they destroy creativity? You listen to my last episode, you'll know why I brought that up. Is technology making us less human? And life without a phone? And another 7 other questions that you're going to hear coming right up on You're Probably Right podcast. All right, let's get right into it. I'm going to start today off with a reading from Proverbs. And I'll be reading straight out of the MacArthur Study Bible. It is the ESV version, the English Standard Version. And it's published by Crossways, if you need to know. It's a really good Bible. It gives you a lot of anecdotal or expository notes of the scriptures. So, when you get bogged down on certain scriptures and you're wondering, what does this mean? Well, guess what? Dr. MacArthur has actually left an area down at the bottom of each page where he explains certain scriptures. Okay, well, pretty much most, if not all, of scriptures. Okay, so I'm going to read today from Proverbs 10. And the whole thing is I could just go into a bunch of questions or I could just bring up a bunch of topics today, but I decided, you know what? Let me give you some wisdom from the wisest man who lived on this earth besides Jesus, and that would be the name Solomon. Okay, so we're right up in Proverbs 10. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the cravings of the wicked. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in the harvest is a son who brings shame. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceal violence. The memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will not. The wise of heart will receive commandments, but the babbling fool will come into ruin. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his way crooked will be found out. Whoever winks the eye causes trouble, and a babbling fool will come to ruin. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. On the lips of him who is understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod for the back of him who lacks sense. The wise lay up knowledge, but the mouth of fools bring ruin near. A rich man's wealth is a strong city. The poverty of the poor is their ruin. The wage of righteousness leads to life. The gain of the wicked to sin. Whoever needs instruction is on the path to life, but whoever heeds instruction is on the path to life, but he who rejects reproof leads others astray. The one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slander is a fool. When words are many, transgressions is not lacking, In other words, if you talk a lot, chances are eventually you're going to say a lot of nonsense. But whoever restrains his lips is prudent. The tongue of the righteous is a choice silver. The heart of the wicked is of little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of sense. The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. Doing wrong is like a joke to a fool, but wisdom is pleasure to a man of understanding. What the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desires of the righteous will be granted. When the tempest passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous established forever. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, obviously it's irritating, right? So is the sluggard to those who send him. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. The hope of the righteous brings joy, but the expectations of the wicked will perish. The ways of the Lord is a stronghold to the blameless, but destruction to evildoers. The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut off. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked, what is perverse. And that was Proverbs 10 from 1 to 32. That was pretty much a self-explanatory proverb. All those proverbs, pretty much. And if you don't think so, then I would say the best thing I could probably tell you to do is maybe listen to it again, or maybe follow in your Bible next time, or replay it and follow in your Bible. And sometimes hearing it from somebody else's voice while you're following along and looking at the actual words, most of the time, as I can tell you, can really help it to sink in so you get it, especially when you read the Bible in context and not just plucking verses from here and there to prove a point, as I've said before. So I'm going to get to the questions now.
Maybe your stupid opinions aren't right. And like, are you so sure your life is going so much the way you want it to go, and you're such a bloody paragon of virtue, and the light is shining out every orifice, and everyone who disabuses you of your notions is evil?
Should anonymity be allowed on the internet? Now, of course, this might work better if there was 1, 2, or 3, or 4 people answering this question at one time, so that we could all give our 2 cents and maybe run things off, or, off each other and play off of whatever each other thinks. But I'm just going to give you the basics and understand when I'm giving you these answers as to how I feel at this present time. I mean, some things don't change, but then sometimes your mind is in a certain area, and therefore you may not. Well, obviously, I'm not going to come up with every single angle. So just to let you know, and generally when I am answering a question, I try to do it from a godly perspective as best as I can. Okay, so just understand that's where it comes from. And I truly invite you to open the scriptures and learn the wisdom of God. It's all in there. That's where I would say the wisest people around get their knowledge from. And of course, there's being taught, but a lot of people base a lot of what they teach off of the scriptures. They just may not say so. Anyhow, first question. Should anonymity be allowed on the internet? As I just said. Personally, I would say so. I would say yes. I would say you should be able to be anonymous when using the internet. But the reason why it's not good is one answer for the whole society is obviously not a good idea, because there's some people who can't handle it. pretty much. Like if you're a 5-year-old and you're going on all kinds of sites that you have no business on, if you're anonymous, then it's like you could be anywhere on the internet and nobody would know, as well as you could be also 59 and show up on things with like discourse or whatever it is, and you're talking with 12-year-olds and people have no idea who you are. And I think to keep track, I would say, of the trolls and the people who are just out for trouble and to make other people feel bad and to cause problems, I would say the best thing is for people to know exactly who they're talking to, and I think your identity should be wide open for everyone to see, so that you can actually treat people like if you would treat them in person. I would say that's the one argument of famous people, is that a lot of the time their actions, their behaviors have been scrutinized by people who refuse to show their face or their real name. So in other words, maybe, for instance, and I'll probably talk about this a few times in the coming weeks, but if you watch basketball at all, there's a guy named Russell Westbrook, and they are scrutinizing him every day, every single game. If he has one game, a few people will throw him some credit, like sportscasters or whatever it is. But in general, the public has been horrible to this guy lately. Now, if you've ever watched him play, you will know that he is a very, very, very hardworking person. But the problem with that is sometimes he overdoes it, or as people have said in recent years, you're doing too much, which he can obviously be blamed for many times. But the stuff that they said, now they officially call the guy by a derogatory name regularly, whereas for the last 2, 3, 4 years, he's been the only player to register something called a triple-double and average that for an entire 2 seasons. I think he's done it. And nobody's done that since, I think, somebody named Oscar Robertson or Peterson. I can't remember. But, it's funny how people can get at this guy, and they have no credibility when it comes to sports. They have no credibility when it comes to athletics in general, but they happen to have a popular YouTube channel. So they're able to take this person's likeness from an organization like the NBA and make crazy titles and make crazy claims in a chat, and these chats go 500,000-600,000 deep of people just offering scrutiny to one play. They're not actually showing the whole game. They're not showing, well, obviously you can't, but you understand, they're just taking pieces or bits and pieces of this person's performance and scrutinizing it, and sometimes vilifying this person or just basically damaging that person. Now, one person might say, well, you know what, I would just encourage people who are famous not to look at YouTube, not to look at Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is that, or TikTok, wherever their likeness could possibly show up. But that would basically say don't go on social media, because it could pop up at any time. And if it doesn't even pop up for you, the chances are somebody will probably slide that video over to you or that footage. And, these are people with wives and kids and lives. And we wonder, on a whole as society, why famous people self-destruct at some point. So, at the end of the day, I believe that just as we walk down the street, and it's very possible, you carry your ID on you. I think as you go to different websites and you decide to chat, I think you should have a verified identification in these chat sites, not Bubble 123 or Chicken Master 47. I think you should actually have your John Smith on there. And I think that the behavior in the internet would be a lot different. But of course, that's just my idea. And if you don't agree, you're probably right. Okay, number 2. Do deadlines destroy creativity? Now, the reason why I laughed about this earlier was that I went on with a little ranting session, but it wasn't really that much of a rant, I guess. It was just realizing the disappointment of not being able to do something that you really wanted to do because you were ill prepared and because you were under the gun of time. So, in other words, I explained that I was going for a job interview, not a job interview, but I had an opportunity to write on something for a job opportunity. But the issue was there was a time limit or a deadline. Therefore, I had to sign on at a specific time, which was directly after my workday. And I had 1 hour exactly to, first of all, read over and digest the scenario. And then I had, I guess, depending on how long it would take me to digest the scenario and really, really think it through, I couldn't really because I had a time limit. And I had to put down exactly point by point of what I would do in that situation. Now, because of the time constraint, which, I mean, if it's an emergency, but the job doesn't work off, obviously people know that they would do certain things if it was like life or death, but most other things would allow you time to really think it through. And I believe because of the deadline, I think it definitely destroyed my creativity, my creative thought, because I just had to come up with an hour to come up with an answer. Basically, all you're being allowed to do is pretty much come up with textbook answers, not reasoning as to why you would do certain things, but just you had to cover your bases with all of the social norm buzzwords that have come out. And that's what I did. And unfortunately for me, it messed me up. Now, I can assume that the people who were going to overlook this thing just didn't want to be reading for days. Because, I mean, if they said write in your dissertation on why you believe that heat is better for your body than cold, a person could write for days. Or somebody could just give you a paragraph. But anyhow, I would say, obviously, no answer is straight across the board in every situation. There's always gray areas, but that would be my opinion. All right. 3. Work from home, the pros and cons. Now, I'm not going to give you a list, but I will give you a simple. For some people, of course, and I'm sorry if I keep saying some people, because basically everything isn't everybody. If everything isn't good for every person. But pros and cons. Obviously, if you work at home, you don't have any travel, so you save gas for a person. You get less exercise if you usually commute, or if you're a student, you get less exercise because maybe there's a physical education component to your education that you'll probably not be getting the very best of at home. Unless, of course, you happen to have a treadmill, the will to use it, or weights, or whatever it is, or you go for jogs in the morning, then I guess in that aspect you'd be fine. But some people say that being at home, you know, sometimes you're communicating with people, you're not getting to read facial gestures as much, even if you're able to be in a meeting here and there, or you don't get social norms, or you don't get to speak to many people at the same time in physical proximity. If you're on meetings, everybody gets to do up themselves how exactly they want to present themselves, and only what they want to be seen shall be seen, unless of course they make a mistake on camera. I don't know if it develops the sense of teamwork when you're working in a team because everything's online. I know personally that when I had to do projects like in college, it was kind of a thing where one person would set the outline, another person might divvy up the sections for each person, and then people would fill out their sections. And oftentimes, because it was online, that a lot of the stuff wasn't really congruent. So, you know, I would say there definitely are pros and cons. And, you know, what would I prefer? I think it would be nice in some cases to be able to do it, and in some cases to end it and go back in. 4. Lessons for the world from COVID. Where do I start? Personally, I would say that it would have been a lot better of a situation, even though it was something that was foreign to everyone. It would have been better to have had the medical professionals head up whatever it is we were doing. I believe politics was really numbered amongst most of the things that we were doing, or the reason why what we were doing most of the time, and it had nothing to do with health. And that's why there's such a huge discrepancy when you have seen reports coming out saying that 99.7% of the people who catch COVID will not get sick, or mostly the people who were getting sick were over the age of 82 or something like that. And virtually hardly any children got extremely sick from it. And there was times when we were closing schools and opening schools and buying ventilators, and times when there was masks that were being given out, and then we were told that masks weren't needed. Then we found that the reason why they were told that is because they wanted to save the masks, supposedly for health professionals. And it just went on and on and on. And what I think the biggest lesson from COVID is, if it is a health crisis, it really does need to be directed by health professionals, and politics needs to stay all the way out of it, because it just mucked up the whole thing, in my opinion, of course. And if you don't agree, well, you're probably right. I'm sure you got your reasons to disagree in that situation, but I really believe, and I think most people probably would agree with me, that the politics really messed up this whole so-called pandemic. Number 5. Is technology making us less human? I don't think that it's necessarily making us less human, but I think it's messing up the way that we interact with humans. It's kind of like and that's of course interacting with humans, but of course also how our memories work and how much information that we as a person have to hold and contain in our little brains. I mean, the easiest example of this is phone numbers. If you're a person growing up in, say, the 80s, 90s, and before, then you would know that as far as phone numbers concerned, you probably knew 10 to 20 phone numbers off by heart. And it was just something normal. I mean, yeah, people carried telephone books because when they really wanted to learn or know or keep track of a lot of phone numbers, people knew how to use a phone book, a dictionary. But now you don't need a dictionary. You don't need a phone book. You can simply pick up the phone and say, "Hey Siri, how do you spell supercalifragilistic?"
Okay, I found this on the web for how do you spell supercalifragilistic. Check it out.
Right? And then you look down on your phone. And that's if you wanted to read, because sometimes if you wanted to just ask a question, like maybe somebody was saying, "Hey Siri, what does the fox say?"
Cha 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 cha.
See? And that would answer your question. So there was no need for any kind of research or finding out for yourself or any problem solving skills. A lot of time you can just ask a device. So is it making us less human? No, but I think it's making us less smart and less able to problem solve. 6. Have we become a cynical society? Now, so-called cynical, well, to be cynical is believing that people are motivated by self-interest, distrust for human sincerity or integrity, and from these so-called, what they call them, conspiracy theorists, where everybody from Jay-Z to the president of the United States to the head of the CDC and the World Health Organization. Everybody is up to something, and there's some diabolical plan to either control population, destroy half the population, feminize all of male populations, and it just goes on and on and on. And let's not, a lot of this started when people started speaking about the Rothschilds and the Illuminati, and then it just went into every facet of mainstream society. You had people calling ministers workers of the devil. The Pope was the Antichrist, and listen, I'm not even saying it. It's not even true, but the bottom line is like, you don't even know where to trust. And I think it got so, saturated in our society. It's like you take every little piece of news with a grain of salt. You take every piece of different news that you would not necessarily get off CNN or a place like CB24 if you're from Toronto with a big grain of salt, because you just don't know who you can trust anymore. So I would definitely say that we have become a cynical society in a big way. 7, if winning isn't everything, why do we keep score? I would say that honestly, winning isn't everything, but the question is, what is winning? So in other words, are you saying if somebody scores the most points in a game, obviously it tells us who's the leading scorer, but does it tell you that that person was the MVP or the most, or the other words, the most valuable player? Not necessarily. I think that there is credibility in different facets of life, and there are different ways that one can win. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the highest number is the most important number in everything. Sometimes the lowest number is, right? Anyhow, so I would say that winning isn't everything, but winning is definitely something. And we keep score just to keep track of what people do or what people have done or what people haven't done. 8, expectation kills happiness. Does it? Well, I would say yes. Because when you expect, sometimes we don't know how to bridle our expectations, or we don't know how to temper our expectations with reality. And when expectations are not tempered with reality, we set ourselves up for big failure. You may say, okay, like for instance, looking at scriptures, one thing that was said in, most churches with husbands that were having struggles with, say, their husband or their wives or their children, whatever it is, it would be like, children, obey your parents. And people would run with that. And it was like, okay, well, my dad just told me to go to the store and steal a loaf of bread. Should I obey? Well, it says like things were taken out of context, right? Expectations, it'd be like when people would say, like a guy was losing control of his household and maybe his wife had different ideas of how things should be done. So therefore, the guy would bring up something like, wives, submit yourself to your own husband. Or if it was intimacy, it would be that kind of thing that would be brought up, and it would be totally taken out of context. Whereas I think if you left your expectations at your own front door, closer to your chest, then if you were more willing and more trying to live up to the expectations you believe were there for you as a Christian, then I believe things would be a lot better. But because we place our expectations on other people's ability, capacity, desire, and a whole bunch of other criteria, we definitely set ourselves up for failure. So I would say yes. As I said in the beginning, expectations do kill happiness, because sometimes you need to just be able to go with the flow. Sometimes you need to let life happen. And a lot of time when you're expecting things and they don't happen, you're upset. You're not happy. When things you expect to happen don't happen, sometimes they happen, but they don't happen to the extent that you think they're going to happen. Another killer for happiness. Okay. 9. Life without a cell phone. Could you live without a cell phone? I personally think I could. It would take a little bit. I mean, honestly, when my last phone was dying, I was like, that's it. I'm done with the smartphone. I want to get a dumb phone. I want to get a phone that can answer every question that I have under the sun, that doesn't ping and tell everybody exactly where I am, that doesn't wake me up because somebody decides they want to call and hassle me for something, or ring in with a, that we get a lot of crank calls up here in Toronto, Ontario. I don't know how it is from where you are, but a lot of time you'll pick up the phone and the reason why you'll pick it up, even though it's an unknown or unnamed and unknown caller, is because the number is close to yours and you're looking at it saying, I recognize this number. It's like, yes, dummy, you recognize it because it's pretty close to your number, and it's like usually a scam. And a lot of time people are waiting for you to say the words yes, or just agree to some random stuff, hoping that they'll get you on one day when you're slipping. And that is a concern sometimes for me. So yeah, the phone can be a big problem because it stops our creativity. It hinders our memory as far as information, including telephone numbers. It doesn't leave us away from others. It keeps us all connected, really just dragging us all to be able to be in contact with anybody without maybe even a phone call. Sometimes it's a text, and it could change your whole outlook on exactly what you're doing. I mean, honestly, how many times have you been at work or at school and somebody sends a text that generally they would have had to have waited for the day to be over, or your day to be over, before contacting you about it? Or maybe it's a trivial thing to you, but it's the most important thing to them. But because you're within fingers distance of, tick, 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 click, 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 do you know where you put the milk this morning? Because it's not in the fridge. And it could set off your whole day in a horrible way. So I would honestly like to somehow curtail this. And sometimes I do. Like, there's times when I'll put my phone on a table somewhere and say, I'm going to go shoot some hoops. Instead of, every break, go run to your phone. You left your phone at home, and, you can spend more time with the people that you're actually in front of. Or if you're at work, if you left it locked up in your bag somewhere else other than where you were on your person, you wouldn't be tempted to look at it every 5 seconds. And of course, the less social media that you're on, probably the better as well. So I would like to do it. Life without a phone wouldn't be easy, but I would encourage people to do it more and more. Last question for the day. College, should it be free for everyone? My answer is no. The reason why I say no, because many people would abuse it. College isn't for everyone. Now, should it be free for everyone who needs it and can afford it? Yes. But I think when you start devaluing it or not putting a number on it, unfortunately, what ends up happening in our world, first of all, some people would be in college for the rest of their lives. You'd have to police it. You'd have to say, you know what, you can only go to one course every 3 years. And then you'd have people who were headed on to bigger and better things, but because you put a time limit, or you put how much education you can get within a certain amount of time on hold for some people, would ruin it for them. So how could you afford to give college for everyone? And would it continue to be college if it was free? Wouldn't it just be a continuation of high school? And if you've grown up in Canada or United States, you know that a lot of people don't take high school very serious. So it's a really tough question, because I know, at least I've been told, that there is some levels of college that in the UK that you can get for free, and it can qualify you maybe to be an electrician, or maybe a truck driver, or maybe some kind of a metal shop or a plumber apprentice or something like that, and you can keep your trades people in trades. I know that in Toronto they used to have like metal shop and home economics and different things that, you would learn just in high school. So maybe they could up the learning that you get in high school, but to have college to be totally free for everyone, I would probably say it's probably not a good idea. But if you agree with these 10 things, hey, you could be right, or you could be probably right. Anyhow, that's it for this week, or at least for today, unless I decide to come back on. I have a bunch of other questions that I'm going to answer and more scriptures, and I would love it if you would send me your questions if you have questions. And the best place for you to leave these questions would be at yprpodcast@gmail. Wait, yprpodcast@gmail.com. All right? Anyhow, till next time, it's MCM signing off. Take care. I didn't know what else I could say, but listen very closely, okay? I love you because you understand, dear, every single thing I tried to do.